Well, have you ever thought about getting on a grand jury? Well, we have a couple gentlemen here today that can tell you what that entails, what it's about, and really what the grand jury does. And I'd like to welcome actually returning guests. You were here last time, Judge Charles Marginis.
Marginis, yes.
Marginis.
Good to
nice
be
to
here.
have you on here again.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we love hearing about this. And we have Peter Hirsch, your floor person.
That's right.
With the current OC grand jury.
Right. Great to be here.
It's wonderful because I think this is great information. First, Judge, I want to talk about what is a grand jury because people hear about this. They hear about a grand jury in the news. A lot of law programs, TV shows, you hear about a grand jury. And it's almost like it's a mystery who they are and what they do. So go through with that if you can.
Sure. The grand jury is composed of 19 citizens from the county who are selected by the judges of the county. And they serve both civil and criminal functions. On the criminal side, the grand jury receives evidence presented by the district attorney's office and then decides whether or not to issue an indictment, that is, to bring criminal charges on serious cases. We're talking about felonies. On the civil side, the grand jury acts as the public watchdog. It investigates the county and government agencies within the county, such as cities, special districts, school districts, and so on, in order to determine if they are operating efficiently and within the bounds of the law. The grand jury also looks at conditions in the local jails. At the end of its term, the grand jury prepares a report on each investigation it conducted, and it typically conducts 12 or more investigations. And by law, the agencies are served with a copy of the investigation, and they have a duty to respond.
Okay, so it sounds like an awful lot to do, Peter. How long are you on the current term? Have you done this before? And I should mention that the terms for OC grand jury goes from July 1 to June 30th. So you're involved right now. Tell me what a floor person does and how long have you been involved? Is this your first run with them?
Yeah, this is my term started July 1st. I was selected, and I'll be on. We're on as a panel, and all 19 of us were selected at the same time. We're impaneled and started July 1st, and we are on until June 30th.
Okay.
And as the judge mentioned, we do civil investigations. That's probably primarily most of our work, 80 to 90%, and then we work with, as the judge mentioned, with public agencies, cities, the county, special districts, and then about 10 to 20% of our work is working with the district attorney on criminal indictments and investigations that the district attorney presents to us. My job is really to preside over the panel, work on our agendas, help define topics that we investigate, work with the panel members to make contacts at the county and folks they need to interview as part of those investigations, and participate in the writing and review process of the reports that are released during our term between now and June 30th.
Okay. Judge, when it comes to the felony cases, what determines what goes to the grand jury and what doesn't? I think that's always been a very big question. Some people may feel that, or may think that they all go there at first. Why is it that certain ones are selected that the grand jury needs to take a look at this?
All right, the decision is made by the district attorney's office.
Okay.
As a practical matter, very, very few cases arise by way of indictment.
Okay.
Most cases, including most felonies, well over 95%, start with the filing of a criminal complaint.
Okay.
There are a number of reasons why the district attorney would choose to go by way of indictment. For example, if the statute of limitations is about to run out, it's much faster to get an indictment than to file a complaint and then to go through a preliminary hearing. Another reason might be, and this has to do with the nature of the grand jury proceedings, which is secretive. And it's one-sided, there's no cross-examination, and so there are situations where the DA may feel that if the target of an investigation gets wind that there's something going on, he or she might flee the jurisdiction. If the DA gets an indictment, the arrest is made, and then the indictment is made public. Sometimes there's a concern about witnesses being intimidated in a public, in a hearing, a preliminary hearing, which is a public event. Sometimes the district attorney is not quite sure if his case is strong enough, and he wants to test it. So he brings the evidence before the citizens, before a grand jury, and if they feel there's enough, he might go ahead and file. If they say, no, that's not enough, the case might end there.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Peter. Do you folks, and this is something I'm sure people, when they hear grand jury, do you actually sort of try the case? Is whatever your outcome is standing, or does it simply mean that, yes, we feel this can now proceed to a full open trial?
I think what you're referring to is the indictment process, where,
Right.
where the district attorney presents a case to us, they make an opening statement, they bring witnesses to us, they ask questions of the witnesses. We as a panel member, we within the panel can also ask questions of the witnesses. And then after the district attorney makes his closing comments on a case and the elements of the case are summarized for us, we then meet as a panel of 19 to discuss the case.
Okay.
And our job at that point is, if there's an indictment, we need 12 out of 19 votes. My job as a panel, as the foreperson of the panel, is to summarize the burden of proof that we have to consider that was provided to us by the district attorney, look at the individual elements of the crime, summarize that, and decide whether or not the defendant or the prospective defendant potentially committed the crime.
Okay.
And when we vote 12 out of 19, we can vote 12 out of 19 to indict. All that means is that typically the district attorney can then file formal charges.
Okay.
We don't convict, we don't try, but then the formal charges are filed, and then those go in front of a petit jury, which is what people normally are familiar with, where you come in on a case, try the case, and if the prosecution has presented beyond a reasonable doubt the elements of the crime, it's up to that jury then to consider whether or not a defendant is guilty or not. So we indict. Our standard is a little bit lower. We need 12 out of 19. Typically, when it goes to trial, a criminal trial is unanimous.
Yes.
So for us, it's 12 out of 19 to indict, and that's basically information for the court, the judges, and the district attorney on whether or not charges can be filed, formal
Okay.
charges.
I would think, Judge, it would be quite a challenge to recruit people for this. What are some of the qualifications that you look for?
Sure. It's a challenge because being on the grand jury is almost a full-time job, and the pay is very low. We don't call it pay, it's a stipend of $50 a day for every day that you serve. The qualifications, the legal qualifications are, you have to be a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years old, no felony convictions. You have to have been a resident of Orange County for at least the last year. You have to have sound judgment and to possess a sufficient command of English to be able to communicate and to write reports. We look for people who can work well with others. Grand juries are not lone wolves, they work in committees. So we want people who are able to get along with others. Knowledge of computers, particularly word processing, is very critical because a lot of what you do involves writing reports.
Okay.
And we want people with life experience.
So as the assistant presiding judge, do you sort of oversee the operations of the grand jury? Do you sit on, are you a trial judge? Do you sit on the bench? Or you basically kind of oversee this program?
Okay, to answer your questions, I'm an administrative type judge. I don't handle any cases. I oversee the recruitment and selection of the grand jury. Once the grand jury takes its oath of office on July 1st, I no longer oversee them. That's done by the supervising judge of the felony panel. May I talk a little bit about the recruitment?
Sure, yeah,
okay,
please do.
I appreciate
Yes,
it. Okay,
definitely.
our recruitment is ongoing. We started on October 1st, and the last date to apply is January 22nd, 2016. We have a robust recruitment process where a committee of 25 judges, reviews all the applications and selects 90. That would be 18 from each of the 5 supervisorial districts to move forward. So We invite those 90s to attend about a 1-hour orientation just so they get an idea of what the job entails. At the same time, we also commence background checks done by the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
So we look at we do a criminal record check. We speak with their employers or former employers, their neighbors, themselves. We do a credit check. And then teams of 2 judges interview each one of the 90 people who are selected.
Wow.
And then the judges get together and pick the top 25 to 30 grand jurors, 5 or 6 from each of the supervisorial districts. Those are put up for a vote by all of the judges on our bench.
Wow.
And then those 25 to 30, and we aim for 30, are invited to come to our to Department C1 of our court, where there's a public random drawing of those names, and the first 19 become the next grand jury. The remaining 11 become alternates.
Okay.
In case one of the serving grand jurors is no longer able to serve. And the last step is we invite people of the 19 to apply to be the foreperson. And that decision is made after interviews by the presiding judge.
Okay, so Mr. Hirsch, sounds like quite a commitment. Are most of the people that are on the grand jury retired because of the commitment that is needed, or do you have people who have full-time jobs as well?
As a judge said, there's really no time for a full-time job. It is if
Okay.
we do it right as a panel with the work that we've taken on and the commitment we have to the court system, to each other, and to ourselves individually, it really is pretty much of a full-time job. We work, sometimes from home. Typically, our days are from 8:30 to 2:30, but many of us stay beyond that to do research and analysis. And sometimes into the evening. So it really is a full-time commitment, but it's tremendously rewarding, an unbelievable learning experience, and to work with your peers. We come from different backgrounds, different skill sets, different backgrounds, different personalities, different upbringing. So to work together as a team, to me, is ultra rewarding, and to move it in a direct. Our legacy is going to be the reports we produce, the credibility of our reports, the effectiveness and accuracy for the public to make government better. That's our challenge, and that's our legacy.
Yeah. And I would even think that there are times that you hear something on the news where they go, well, the Orange County grand jury provided information to indict this person or go through with it or whatever it might be, and you might hear that on the news and think to yourself, wow, they're talking about me, they're talking about us.
Well, what's most rewarding is when the investigative process, we speak to the public through our reports. That's all we do, and we prepare those, as I mentioned, throughout the year. And when the government agencies look at that, they're required to respond. Typically, there are a number of deadlines, but the deadline to respond is 90 days.
Okay.
And then we've noticed over time there are reports that were done by our predecessor grand juries 1 year, 2 years removed, that the government agencies are looking at, and they're making changes in the structure and system, reflecting on the findings and recommendations that panel did. Hopefully our panel will have that same legacy, where it doesn't happen right away sometimes it does, but as the government agencies read the reports, they'll respond and actually implement the recommendations over time. That's when there's a real reward for what we did.
Yeah. So the grand jury actually comes up with different recommendations and protocols, suggestions that could be used. Is that when they review a case, they kind of look over things and say, well, this, especially when it comes to possibly a government agency, they're looking at, this probably should have been done this way.
It's not so much reviewing a case, but they review the workings of government agencies, and as Mr. Hirsch said, they come up with and they come up with recommendations that are often adopted. It gives you a good feeling, I bet, doesn't it, Mr. Hirsch?
Absolutely. I mean, it allows us. When my background was in government, half my career was in government, half of it was in the private sector. In government, there are a lot of things that you, as a staff person, would want to do and change. Now you're on the grand jury, you have a chance to look at that, from a little bit afar, and objectively look at their organizational structure and management structure, how they operate, and if we can come up with efficiencies, better spend taxpayer dollars, be more responsive to the public. That's what we do. So that's the civil side of our work, where we
Okay,
look
so
at
the
the
civil side
operations
is
of
not,
government.
you're not looking to indict anyone or go
and
after anyone.
that's 80
Okay.
to 90% of our work, and that's
Interesting.
That's a misnomer. People think that it's what you see on television.
Yeah.
Well, what you see on television is what the judge mentioned: the indictments, the investigations.
Mm-hmm.
But in our state, in Orange County, most of our work is the civil investigations. And the district attorney, in certain instances, would come to present a case to us, as the judge mentioned, as needed for their work, their prosecutorial work. That's the criminal side of our work, and that's, like I said, about 10 to 20%.
Okay.
And the grand jury, I should add, is a completely independent body. Nobody tells the grand jury who or what to investigate or who or what not to investigate. And their investigations can be initiated in a number of ways. For example, an anonymous tip, or a letter that's signed complaining
Okay.
about some wrongdoing in an agency. It could be an article that one of the grand jurors read in the newspaper that might trigger a suggestion for an investigation.
Interesting.
And so they have complete freedom to conduct their investigations. They can actually ask the court for help, for example, help in subpoenaing witnesses. Sometimes they need legal advice, and the county council serves as its legal advisor unless there's some sort of conflict, and then they can ask the Attorney General to provide advice, or even ask the presiding judge to appoint an independent attorney to help them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of what you do isn't necessarily trying to go after an individual or any particular group of individuals as far as a criminal case where you're trying to put them away. What you're trying to do is maybe taking deeper looks at certain departments and recognizing a problem and trying to come up with recommendations for a better way of doing things where the outcome benefits everyone.
Exactly. That's most of our work. Most of our work is geared toward identifying a topic that may have come in through a complaint letter, something we've read in the paper, something we may know about individually, and then we as a panel need to decide which one of those civil investigations move forward. And then that's what we pursue, and that's most of our work. We then interview folks from the various departments. We do online research. We do research in documents. We look at basically the processes, the administrative processes in the various departments where we've identified something could potentially be done better or differently. That's the civil side of our work. And that's when the reports that I mentioned earlier, those are the reports that we produce during the year. Typically, it could be anywhere from 10 to 20 reports of various departments, county departments, city departments, special districts. There's special districts such as the OCTA, the water districts. It is our choice on what we want to investigate, and as the judge said, we are very independent. We really need to decide what we do and how we do it, and our limitations are basically to ensure that we don't draft anything that's libelous, and we do things that are within our area of investigation, which is local government.
Okay, and it sounds like when they need some additional help, meaning there are people from certain departments that you want to speak to, not because they're individually in trouble, but
That's
you need
exactly.
more information. If they're reluctant to do that, the court can step in and actually subpoena them?
Yes, that's right. Aid in
Okay.
subpoenaing them.
Okay. You started this on July 1st. You have till June. Are you going to? Are you putting your application in for next year? Can you do it another year, or once you're on it, you gotta? That's it.
By our procedures within Orange County, we have to be off 1 year. I cannot apply. If I
Okay.
wanted to, I cannot apply next year, but I can for the following year, basically on my choice. And when you put your application in to serve again, you start all over again.
Okay.
The same you get no credit for having served before. So a deputy sheriff comes to your house and talks to you, they talk to your neighbor, there's a credit check, there's a background check, a federal criminal check, felony check. So it starts all over again.
Yeah, which is good.
If you should choose to serve all over again.
Wow, it's a great process, and I think both you gentlemen really brought forth what a grand jury is all about. A great commitment that you're giving, for sure. And if someone is interested, we put the information on the screen, ocgrandjury.org, or the number is 657-622-6747. If you go to the website, you'll get a lot of this information. The deadline for your initial application is January 22nd of 2016. And then from there is when you folks start the review process, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so it's over the next, obviously whoever gets picked doesn't start until July 1st of 2016, so there's several months in there you review and
Right.
go from there.
If I
Very
could
good.
just add,
Of
your,
course,
your,
please.
your viewers hopefully will be interested in applying, because to me, it really has been an opportunity of a lifetime. You don't get
Sounds
to,
like
you
it.
don't get to do this in any other capacity, and 1 year is the right time to try to make a difference for all of us on the
Yeah,
panel.
very good. It's
Thank you.
great to meet you both. Nice to see you again. I've met you before. I'm sure we'll see
Thank
you
you.
back. And maybe we'll see you back again too.
Thanks for having
you're,
us on.
You're a great sort of a promotional speaker for this, but really bringing forth what it's about and the rewards of it. So thank you very much for
Thanks
being
very
here.
much.
Thank
Judge,
you.
Thank you. Nice
Thank
to
you
see you
so
both.
much. Good to
And
see
we'll be
you.
right back.